Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Write What You Mean, Get What You Want, Copywriting Tips for Office Communication. My name is Jeff Murphy, and I'm an Associate Director in the BU Alumni Relations Office, as well as a proud alumnus of the BU Questrom School of Business. Today's webinar is sponsored by the BU Alumni Association and is offered to our 300,000 alumni around the globe. Throughout your career, the BU Alumni Association is committed to helping you define and achieve your professional goals. We aim to do this by providing alumni with access to a series of valuable online tools and social media communities. It's important that we get your opinion on how we're doing, so we very much look forward to receiving your feedback via a survey that will be emailed to all of you later today. I know we have alumni joining us from Sri Lanka, the UK, Spain, lots of alumni in California, Maine, Virginia, and of course a lot of alumni here in Massachusetts. For each and every one of you out there, please know that we really do value your opinion on this and every program that we offer. Before I introduce today's speaker, some brief housekeeping notes. As you know by now, this webinar is being hosted on the Adobe Connect online meeting platform. If you experience any trouble with the audio or visual portions of today's presentation, I'll ask that you please contact Adobe Connect directly at 1-800-422-3623. Today's presentation is being recorded and will soon be made available for on-demand viewing on the BU Alumni Association website, which you can find at www.bu.edu/alumni. Our speaker is very eager to answer any questions that you might have today, and so you're welcome to submit them throughout the presentation using the Q&A chat box you see at the bottom of your screen. We hope to get to as many questions as we can. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker for the day. Presenting from here in Boston is College of Communication alumna Nicki Krawczyk. Nikki is a copywriter, copy coach, and founder of filthyrichwritercom, an online resource for new and aspiring copywriters. She's been crafting advertising and marketing copy for more than a decade, working with clients including Marshalls, Adidas, TripAdvisor, Keurig, Hasbro, and yes, even Harlequin romance novels. Nikki, I hope we get to hear a little bit more about that today. Nikki splits her time between writing copy for various clients and coaching would-be copywriters to help them build successful careers of their own. Nikki, thanks so much for being here today. I'm going to go ahead and get your slide deck up.
Super.
And then the floor is all yours.
Excellent. All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to join me. As Jeff said, my name is Nicki Krawczyk. I am a Com 01 alumna, as you can tell from the cocktail there. I'm currently the copy manager at Smarter Travel, which is a TripAdvisor company. I do freelance work. And then, as Jeff mentioned, I also own a company called Filthy Rich Writer, which offers tips and tools and training for new and aspiring copywriters. A little background on me. I've been a copywriter for 12 or 13 years, somewhere in there, not including the time that I spent writing copy for my dad while I was in high school. He was a marketing director who'd bring home extra work for me to do and then give me feedback on my writing. And that kind of gave me the direction to head after school. So that's me. But quickly, before we get into the real meat of our conversation, we have a little poll for you, just out of curiosity, how you would rate your current communication skills in the workplace. So if you all want to take a second and just pop something in there real quick, that'll help us just get an understanding for where you feel you are right now.
And Nikki, I take it you're able to see those results coming in live here?
See the results, yes.
Okay, perfect.
Super. Okay, and now Jeff, can we let that get, can we let people fill that in and keep going as we keep going with the presentation?
Unfortunately, we're going to have to move that away. We'll go ahead and close that out, but thank you everybody for chatting in. It looks like everybody on the call thinks they're pretty good, but we have a few folks that feel like they could do a better job.
Good. Well, and that's what you're here for, and even if you're pretty good, we're hoping to make you excellent. Okay, so the real meat of our conversation, using good communication to better convey your message and basically get what you want. And I specified office communication in the title of this talk since this has a professional development focus, of course, but these are really tools that you can use in any arena. Before we dive into it, though, I do want to deal with a couple of misconceptions. When I've offered seminars like this in the past, people tell me they signed up because they're not good writers. And they feel like because they don't have a natural talent for writing, they don't have a chance of becoming good communicators. However, the thing is, good communication isn't about being an amazing writer. It's just about clarity in your message. It's about crafting your message to get certain key points across. And it's about knowing what those key points are to begin with. And that's what we're going to cover today. I'm not going to make you beautiful writers. That's not what we're here to do. I'm going to make you effective writers. So why am I framing this information around copywriting? Besides the fact that, of course, that's my background. What is copywriting? Well, if you're not familiar with it, copywriting is, at its foundation, language that sells or persuades. It's the words you see in emails coming from a company. It's the words you see in brochures. It's the words you see in magazine ads. Any writing that sells or persuades is copy. It connects someone who has a need with someone else who has a solution to that need. At base, all of your most important business writing is designed to persuade. You want something, and you're communicating to try and get it. You want people to attend a meeting. You want more resources for a new project. You want to persuade your boss that the work you focused on that week has been important. Well, in copywriting, we want things too. We want you to buy the product. We want you to sign up for the newsletter. We want you to think positively about a company. We want you to attend a rally for a candidate, or any one of 100 other things. But we also know that the most effective way to do this is not to focus on what we want. Buy this minivan. Love GE for its environmental initiatives. These sentiments might come up, but never on their own. We're not going to sell people or persuade people by focusing on what we and our clients want. Yes, I want you to buy this minivan, but what do you want? The first and most important thing we focus on when crafting communication is the benefit to consumer. If they do what we want them to do, what do they get? What is the benefit to them? If I'm writing about a new razor that has 7 vibrating blades, when I'm crafting that message, I'm not leading with the 7 vibrating blades. That means nothing. It's a feature, but that doesn't actually mean anything. It doesn't actually get you anything. I'm leading with the benefit that what comes from those 7 vibrating blades is that the user will get a closer, cleaner shave than ever before. That's how they benefit from the product. It's all about what's in it for them. It's a very key phrase that we use in copywriting a lot. What's in it for them? What's in it for our audience? Now, in your communication, you need to focus on the benefit too. I hate to break it to you, but nobody cares about what you want. The only thing they truly care about is what they want. Despite lip service to the contrary, it's a very simple fact of life. The easiest way to get people to do something for you is to explain what they will get out of it. Think about it. Wouldn't you rather do something for someone if there's a clear benefit for you? If someone wants you to attend their meeting, aren't you more likely to attend if you understand that it's not just a brainstorm, but that you'll have the opportunity to advocate for a departmental budget increase? So, first, here are the steps on how to figure out your benefit. First, define what you want, what you personally want to get out of this. But then, define how it's going to benefit the person or people that you're writing to. That should be the focus of your communications. Okay, next part. Now, in copywriting, each of our pieces is geared to target audiences, the people we really want and expect to purchase what we're selling. Those target audiences could be elderly women with high incomes, inner city teens with high grade point averages, young parents with kids in childcare, that sort of thing. But we always have a target audience for our communication. You can't talk the same way to each group. I mean, and that makes sense, right? You can't talk in the same way or use the same words when you're communicating with an elderly woman as you are with a teenager. You can't use the same words to communicate about their jobs with a brain surgeon as with a race car driver. You need to talk to your target audience, and you need to use their language, language that will resonate with them. So, being in the same business as presumably as the people that you are communicating with, you do have a natural advantage because you're already familiar with the general terms. But when you talk to your target audience, which of course would be the recipient of your communication, you need to also use the specific terms that he or she or they need to hear. So, for example, if you know that your boss has been on a subscription acquisition kick for your company's website, then use those exact terms. Use the terms subscription acquisition in your email. Using those words is going to help catch their attention and help them get through your email and focus on what's important. Or if you are writing about something that's going to make the company money with low costs, don't just say that it's going to boost revenue. Write that it's going to help your company hit its EBITDA goals if those are words that your boss would use. I had someone once ask me, well, isn't that pandering to your audience? And it's pandering if you're throwing in words for no reason and you're looking to just kiss butt, or the words have no meaning at all in terms of your message. And by the way, if you're using words for no reason, then why are you writing in the first place? But it's just smart to use words that will resonate most with your audience, words that they themselves use. This also, by the way, makes you look good. When you are using the same words that your boss uses, they know, or the people that you work with, they know that they can communicate effectively with you. So it's a good cue to them as well. Okay, so next step, another important element in copywriting is to directly and clearly tell people what you want them to do. Buy now, sign up now. It's not the first thing in a message by any means. That has to be the benefit to the reader, but it's always in there. In copywriting terms, it's called the CTA, which is short for the call to action. If you want something from someone, you need to come right out and say it. Don't be afraid. Don't make them guess. You won't get the results you want. Ask for what you want. Now, in copywriting, we use commands like, buy now, come in today, and that's probably not appropriate for your work emails. You'll very likely use questions at least some of the time, but those need to be as clear and specific as possible. Do not make people try to figure out what you want from them. Instead of saying something like, we hope to see all teams represented, say, Adam, would you let me know who you'll be sending from your team? I'll email him or her further details. Don't hint at what you want. Go right ahead and say what you want. Again, it'll probably be phrased as a request, but the clearer you can make that request, the better. Don't leave a gray area. Be polite, but be clear about what you're actually asking for. Okay, so those are the big three. The benefit to consumer, the focus on your audience, write to your audience, use his or her language, and then include a clear call to action. We'll go into some other things, but I want to pause here because these are, not pause, we'll keep going, but I want to note that these are really the crux of clear and effective communication. I know it sounds kind of crazy that only 3 things could make a huge difference, but they really can. Once you start implementing them in your communication, you'll see a big difference. And then you'll also start to notice the emails that come through that don't have that in there. The emails where you go, oh, I don't want to do this, or oh, I don't want to deal with this, probably are missing 1, 2, or even all 3 of these things. Okay, so as I said, those are the big 3. Beyond these basics, though, there are a couple of elements that can still trip up your communications. So one mark of bad communication is meandering. And what I mean is talking around a topic, taking forever to get to your point. Some people do this because they feel uncomfortable making requests or telling people to do things. For example, I work with a client that uses instant messaging a lot for communications, and that's fine. It's a company-wide thing. Everybody uses instant messaging. One of the young women that works there starts every single instant message conversation with, "Hi, how are you?" And then a 5-minute conversation. But the thing is, she's not really IMing because she wants to hear about my day. She just feels bad hopping right in with work. But that's how IM is used at this company, to just hop right in and ask questions. It makes everything quicker than sending emails. So in this case, it's actually very annoying that she feels like she has to chat before she makes a request. And the same thing happens in person too. You need to be sure to respect people's time and get straight to the point respectfully. And that's in person and that's in email as well. You don't need to talk all around an issue. Get to your point. And we'll see why that's a problem in another way in just a couple of slides. Another issue you want to watch out for is over-justification. Once you've given your reasons for wanting something, move on. For example, "Carrie, would you forward along that report? It'll help me to model out the numbers." That's fine. That's good. It's straight to the point. It asks for what you want and explains why you need it, if you feel like you need to explain why you need it. However, the also very common, "Carrie, would you forward along that report? It will help me model out the numbers, and I probably should have it anyway so that I can look at the metrics for next week's meeting. That way I won't have to bug you or Dave next week too." That's not okay. It's much longer than it needs to be. It talks all around it, and it over-justifies. And the thing too about over-justification is it sounds like you're unsure of yourself, and that's one of the last things that you want to convey. So ask for what you want, be clear, keep it short, and don't over-justify it. If you need to justify it, for example, "It'll help me model out the numbers," sure, add that in there, but you don't need to give 10 different reasons why you need something. Now, on the other hand, and we'll talk about this balance in a moment, but on the other hand, your email can't be too short. It needs to fully convey what you want, as well as any appropriate benefits and background information. So it needs to be to the point, but it can't be curt. You don't want to come across as rude in your email. So use full sentences and fully explain what you mean, but you don't need to over-explain. Give the short, simple explanation. Don't give the 5-paragraph explanation. So you also need to avoid sentences that are too long. One thing we always hear as copywriters is that nobody reads the copy. That's obviously a vast overstatement, otherwise I wouldn't have a job. But there is a grain of truth to it. Nobody reads all the copy. People look at long paragraphs or long sentences and they want to skim through it. And I'm sure you feel the same way too about emails that you get that are incredibly long. Well, if you feel that way about incredibly long emails, they probably feel that same way about any emails that you send that are incredibly long. If you have long sentences and or long paragraphs in your writing, people will do the same thing. And you don't want people to skim your emails because now that you've watched the rest of this training, your emails will be full of only important information. So start by simplifying your sentences. None should be more than roughly 10 words at most. And if you need to cut a sentence in two, cut it in two. It's always easier to understand a short sentence than it is to understand a really long sentence. If you have a list of things, bullet them out. And keep your paragraphs short and digestible. They should be no more than 3 sentences. If the paragraphs are long, people are going to skim and miss important parts of your communication. So if you write something out, you get your benefit in there, you get your request in there, and you get the keywords in there, and you notice that your sentences are getting long, your paragraphs are getting long, go in there and break it up. Chances are really long sentences could easily be broken down into 2 or maybe even 3 sentences that convey that information, but make it just a little bit easier to understand. Because let's face it, when you have a long paragraph, oh, excuse me, when you have a long sentence, well, both. When you have a long paragraph or a long sentence, you have to remember all of that information as you go through. You have to remember the beginning of the sentence, the middle of the sentence, and the end of the sentence. Well, it's a long sentence. It's really hard to remember all of that. Short sentences just make it easier to understand. And my last point is kind of related to this as well. A copywriter never, ever throws together a piece and then just sends it along without looking at it twice. And no professional should ever do that either. And I don't just mean doing any copy work, but I mean any emails that you're sending, any memos that you're sending, even notes that you're leaving for a colleague or someone that reports to you. Even for short emails, for notes, for that kind of thing, take a moment to look it over before you send it. Make sure that it conveys what you mean to say, and make sure that it does it succinctly and does it clearly. Even if you write something through and you take a lot of time at it, you might even want to save it in your drafts folder and come back and just take a fresh look if it's a really important message. Oftentimes, even when I'm writing stuff out, I will take a look at it a second time and go, oh God, that's not what I mean right there. I need to change this up. Or, oh, I could be more specific there. Or, you know what, that line is way too long, or they don't need to know that. So always go back and take a look at it before sending it out. And that actually brings me to a very quick ending point before we recap. A lot of people are very concerned about punctuation and grammar and elements like that. So first, a lot of these other points that we've covered are going to automatically fix your grammar. If you're writing clearly and you're writing to the point while keeping your sentences short and you're reading things through before you send them, the biggest grammar mistakes you could make are very likely going to get fixed there. If, however, you are someone that has that is just naturally grammar challenged, as some of us are, it's a good idea to have someone in your office who you don't mind sharing the stuff with, who is good at grammar, good with grammar. I wouldn't recommend asking them to take a look at every single email you send, but for the really big, important ones, it's not a bad idea to have someone take a second look. A lot of people will send their emails to me, and I occasionally will send my emails to a few respected colleagues just to kind of bounce it off them to see what they think. But like I said, the vast majority of your grammar issues are already going to get fixed. When it comes to punctuation and smaller grammar mistakes, those kind of little typo things, don't get too caught up in this or too worried about this. If the content of your email is clear, it's benefit-oriented, and it's effective, then punctuation and small grammar mistakes are going to matter so much less. It's really when you're writing a crappy email as a whole that the bad punctuation really stands out. But when you're writing to the benefit and you are using the right words and you're asking for what you want, you're doing it effectively and succinctly, small punctuation mistakes and little grammar slip-ups are really going to matter much less. People are much more forgiving if your overall message is clear and effective. Now, that said, I know people like little tips, so when it comes to punctuation and grammar, be sure to capitalize only proper nouns. People do a lot of capitalization of random words because they feel like important words. That's not the way to go. However, not sure if it's a proper noun, like that if there, don't capitalize it. So obviously that I and the if wouldn't be capitalized. If you're not sure if it's a proper noun or whether it is a proper noun, don't bother going and looking it up and Googling on the internet unless this is for a major presentation to stockholders or the CEO or anything like that. If it's for a standard email, just don't capitalize it and send it on. Don't make yourself crazy about it. If you need to make something plural, just add an S. It doesn't need an apostrophe. There are a few exceptions to that rule, but the vast majority of the time, just add an S. Don't. So bananas, banana, to make bananas, just add an S. Don't add an apostrophe. So for example, I ate several hamburgers, not I ate several hamburgers. And I'm bringing these points up just because they're especially egregious and can be embarrassing after you've sent them. And then also the tricky thing with it's, a lot of people have a lot of problems with this. Where does the apostrophe go when? This also kind of breaks that, breaks the possessiveness rule. It's, as in it is it apostrophe s, as in it's nice out. But it's possessive, so something belongs to it, is its, no apostrophe. So its color was blue, no apostrophe. Okay, those are my little grammar typo kinds of things. But again, focus much more on the content of your message, and any little typos like this will be very likely forgiven. Okay, so, this went so quickly. To sum up before we get into the questions, because I hope you guys have lots of questions. I love answering questions. Our three big keys are, in your messages, focus on the benefit to reader. Focus on the benefit to the person that you're writing it to. What do they get out of what you want in this email or other type of message? 2, write to your audience. Use his or her language as much as possible. It will help you connect to them, and it will help get the message across much clearer. 3, include a very clear CTA, which again is a call to action or request. Go ahead and ask for what you want. Don't make them guess at it. That's where the problems come in. And then the additional tips were, don't meander. Get to the point. Don't waste people's time telling them all kinds of additional things. Just get right to it. Don't over-justify. Give your reason, and then get on with it. And again, one of the biggest problems with over-justification, in addition to adding all kinds of additional words that are not essential, is that it makes you look unsure. And that's obviously not what you want to convey in a business setting. Don't make your communication too short. You want to make sure to give all of the necessary information. You don't want to skip the benefit to your reader. You don't want to skip letting them know what you want, the call to action, the request. Make sure you give all the necessary information. And also keep your sentences short. Keep your paragraphs short. Use bullets when you can. You want to give all of that essential information, but you want to make it as digestible as possible. Again, when you can, break up your sentences. Take out extraneous words. Keep your paragraph short. If you're looking at a five-line paragraph, chances are you can go in there, and it might even just be a matter of hitting enter and creating a new paragraph out of your, creating 2 paragraphs out of your single paragraph. That really makes a big difference when it comes to, number 1, people being able to digest all of it, and number 2, people actually bothering to read through your whole email. I know that's terrible, but it's true. When we get long emails, we don't want to read them. We want to skip through, and then we miss important information, and you don't want people to miss important information. And then, of course, the last key, which is really important to make a habit, read everything over before you send it out. Don't ever let anything that comes from you go out just on a whim. And even if you've thought the message through very carefully and you've incorporated all these other points, it's a really good habit to get into, to once you finish writing it, take a moment and read it all through again and just make sure it says exactly what you want to say. And again, if it's a really, really important piece of messaging, it also never hurts to have a trusted colleague, someone who really understands what you are trying to do and what you're trying to say, to take a look at it and give you feedback. Okay, so 12:30 on the nose. It's question time. I also wanted to include very quickly too that if you have additional questions or you have questions about copywriting or anything like that, you can also catch me later at businesswriting@rcn.com. That's my personal email address, and and if you are interested in copywriting as well, you can check out filthyrichwritercom. Okay, so Jeff, should we start taking some questions?
We absolutely should, and I'm going to go ahead and change my screen here
Okay.
for a second so I can see more of these great questions that have been coming in.
Yay!
Nikki, I didn't tell you, but I've got a giant group of my colleagues who decided to get together and have lunch today while watching this webinar, and so I want to take a second to apologize to them for all the terrible emails I've been sending over the last couple of years. This was really helpful for me, I know, going forward.
It changes
so
today,
thank you
Jeff.
again for that. Exactly. Again, all of our guests are welcome to chat in their questions, but I would ask, please use some of the tips that Nikki just gave and try to keep your questions short and to the point. And Nikki, I'm actually going to invoke moderator privilege and insert myself at the front of the question line. And I want to make sure that I point out for all of our participants too, you're a copywriter by trade and not necessarily a psychologist or an organizational behaviorist. But I think I'm going to open Pandora's box by asking this question that's more about behavior. So, you very clearly laid out this framework about keeping your email short, not meandering, not over-justifying. But in written communications, when somebody is not responsive to your original request, to your original call to action, and in a work situation where you need to get information back from somebody, what do you do when you've written a very clear but short email, sent that out, and then not gotten a response? What does your follow-up look like from a copywriting standpoint?
So, so if you've sent something out and you haven't gotten a response, the next thing I would recommend doing is just sending a shorter, quicker follow-up, as in taking the important parts of your email and condensing them even shorter. So, hey Karen, hadn't heard from you on this yet. Just wanted to make sure you saw bop, bop, bop. I'm hoping to get bop, bop, bop. Take everything you had and make it even shorter. It could be that Karen's inbox is crazy. It just fell to the bottom. I think we're probably, every single one of us, guilty of that. So the first thing to do is just offer that gentle reminder. Because again, it's probably nothing personal, unless Karen's a really terrible person. It's probably nothing personal. She just fell to the bottom of the list. So take everything you have in your original email and just condense it even shorter. If you want to, as we were talking about bullet points earlier, bullet point stuff out to make it that much easier for that person to read. If that still doesn't work and you're in the same office, pop over there. If that still doesn't work, this may be a bigger interpersonal issue, and you might want to perhaps talk to other people on that team or get HR involved, because Karen is clearly ignoring you.
And Jumana has actually asked sort of a related question. She is basically asking about how do you prep somebody to receive your email. So her question is it better to call somebody first, brief them about your request, and then send out an email, or better to email them first and then follow up with a call? Again, maybe not necessarily a copywriting question, but...
No, absolutely. Still communications. Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say it depends on how complicated what you're trying to convey is. If you have something that is relatively complicated or involved, it's certainly not a bad idea to call them up and say, hey, just so you know, I'm going to shoot this email over to you. Here's what it is, high level. Here's what I'm talking about. I've got more details in the email, so you can take a look at it and read it through on your own time. But I just want you to know this is coming your way. It's never a bad idea to prep people. The tricky thing about writing of any sort is that we're a society that likes things quick and we like them easy, and it breaks my heart as a writer. But people skip emails and people skip paragraphs and people skip lines. You know, like I was saying, nobody reads all of the copy. Although obviously that will be different with your emails now. But if you have something very complicated, then it certainly never hurts to kind of give them a prep, say high level, this is what I'm sending over. You see the details in the email, but I just wanted to let you know this is coming your way, especially if it's something that you really need to get them, you need to get their input on quickly. Oh, that's a good point too, is that if you have a timeline, you need to include that. If you need feedback by a certain time, don't just ask for feedback. Say, hey, everybody, I'd appreciate, or, to this one person, I'd really appreciate your feedback by Thursday, end of day, something like that. Because otherwise it's also just going to fall to the bottom of people's to-do lists as well. Oh yeah, I'll get them feedback at some point. But again, if you send someone an email and you don't hear back from them and you send them a little follow-up, if you're in the same office, just pop over and say, hey, I know you're busy, but I sent this to you and I just wanted to, I don't know, whatever you want from that. Get your feedback or get whatever. That's
awesome.
Great, Pascal.
Thanks. Gabriella has written in, if you're writing for a brand on social media and over direct email, how can you separate the verbiage or use different kinds of language for different target audiences? For example, if the brand's targeting millennials and 16 to 21-year-olds, how should copywriting or your written communications be different for different audiences?
Okay, so yes, a true copywriting question. Not that I don't love all questions. But this is getting right to it, true copywriting question. So yes, you'll find often that that the piece and the target audience will dictate the language that you have to use. When you're putting together, say, a direct email or a direct mail piece, the person who's kicking off the project to you is going to have a target audience in mind. And you can't ever really deviate from the full brand voice because the brand is going to have a certain tone. It's going to have words it uses. But within that, it may change the voice a little bit depending on the audience. Now, the tricky thing about writing to social media is that unless you have a lot of insight into who's actually following you, it's very hard to say, okay, this is the demographic that's definitely following me on Twitter, because Twitter is so wide open. So you may just have to use the same brand voice, but it may just need to be a little bit more conversational, which is generally how social media needs to be. That same kind of, like, say, for example, you're writing for a bank. Banks are generally authoritative and straightforward and knowledgeable, but you may need to, if you're writing for social media, you may need to take that tone and just make it a little bit more friendly and a little bit more personable and a little bit more engaging. And then it's going to be kind of dictated by the project. And I know that's kind of a broad answer to that. So if you want more specifics, shoot me an email and we can talk about it a little bit more.
We have another, I think, related question. This person's asking, how do you tailor your communications to be more effective when dealing with a paid service provider? So, for example, if you're emailing your lawyer or a medical professional, your auto mechanic, your plumber, their benefit, at the end of the day, they want their fee, or maybe a good review of their service. So how else can you motivate a paid service provider in a written communication?
Okay, good question. I will go ahead and admit that I have a very low tolerance for lack of response from paid service providers. If you are my lawyer or my doctor or my plumber and I'm paying you and you're not getting back in touch with me, my knee-jerk reaction is to fire you. But I realize that's not necessarily the most effective way to deal with people. So it's a little bit different when you are writing to paid service providers because, as you noted, you are the one who is paying them. So in that case, then you're going to want to start with what you need from them. It's kind of an unwritten understanding that their benefit to working with you is that they will get paid. So the most important thing when you're dealing with paid service providers is to make what you want, which I know this sounds very different from what I was saying, but again, the benefit to them is kind of underlying. The most important thing is to make it very clear what you want and the timeline in which you want it. That is going to help get the best and quickest and easiest response. If you make it a long, especially with paid service providers, if you make it because they have a lot of clients, if you make it a long email and it's very in depth, if you can possibly avoid that and keep it short and keep it quick and to the point, you'll have a much better response rate.
John has written in with, I think, a really great question, something that you and I think, talked about a little bit in preparing for this webinar. But do you have any tips or recommendations for effective use of colors, bold, italicized fonts, any other formatting techniques in written communications to draw special attention or emphasize a point?
So I would avoid color, first of all. Just because it has less of a professional feel to it. I understand that it certainly catches your attention, but in emailing colleagues or communicating with colleagues, I would just avoid it, just because it has less of a professional feel to it. And then when it comes to, I will use bolding occasionally if I have an email that it's by nature long. It's a very complicated concept. I've broken up paragraphs as much as I can. I've broken up sentences as much as I can. I may still use bolding just to go through and highlight, use bolding to bold a few key points, maybe one per paragraph, and just a couple of words. And the purpose of that really is just to help someone else understand it and help them to see what is most important here. And it helps them, it just makes it that much easier. If you open up in an email and it's giant and huge and it's a bunch of paragraphs, it's a different story if you open it up and those paragraphs also have bolding. What am I trying to say? Bolding pulled out. So certain sections that are bolded. It makes it that much easier to read it. Now that said, it also makes it a little bit easier to skim. So if you have something that's very important and you need someone to read every single word, then you might want to actually skip the bolding, because if you bold, people are going to skip from bold section to bold section to bold section. If you need someone to read every single word, don't be afraid to start out the email by saying, hey, John, I know this is a long email and it's very detailed, but please read through carefully. And to give them that cue that they need to say, all right, I'm going to need 15 minutes to really focus on this, as opposed to checking email when we all do on the fly in between meetings.
Awesome, thank you. Another really good question, short but sweet. Do you have any suggestions for email subject lines?
Oh, great question. Yes. Okay, so email subject lines. In copywriting, email subject lines are crazy crucial, because if you write a crummy subject line, it doesn't matter what work you did in your email, because nobody's ever going to read it. They're going to see the crummy subject line and they're going to delete. So they're crazy important in copywriting. They're actually also really important in business writing too, as you know on a gut level. Now, in business writing, or in office communication, the chances are a little bit less that someone's going to see your email and just delete it. And again, there may be interpersonal issues that need to be dealt with. But what that may mean, a not quite up to par subject line, is that maybe someone will wait to read it, or they'll check it later, or they'll skip it for other things. So when it comes to your subject lines, you have two options, and one is probably the simpler one. The first one, the simple one, is just a quick summation of what your email is about. Something like important notes for tomorrow's meeting, or questions I have about this candidate, or something like that. Just a very quick summation of what the content of your email is. If someone can know just by seeing your subject line what's in there, it'll be that much easier to get them to open and be like, oh, okay, let me just deal with this right now. The second option is a little bit more in the copywriting vein. It's a little bit more, I wouldn't say complicated, but a little bit trickier. And that is to use the benefit in the headline. In the subject line. So, for example, and sometimes they'll overlap. Sometimes they'll definitely overlap. But so, for example, maybe your email is about, or we talk about something about, subscription acquisition. Maybe it's subscription acquisition opportunity. And that may very well be a summation and the benefit to reader, or new revenue opportunity, that kind of thing. If you can include the benefit as well as kind of the summation, you'll have a much better chance of getting someone to read it and to deal with it quickly.
I want to thank our guests for chatting in with some great questions. We actually have quite a few more. Nikki, I just wanted to check in. You've been answering these for about 15 minutes. Are you good to keep going for a few more?
Absolutely. Let's keep going.
Okay, awesome. How about advice specifically regarding resumes? We're all told that a one-pager is what you need to stick to, but it doesn't often give the full picture. So Norma's wondering if you have any advice on that.
Yes, definitely. So my first piece of advice is there's this big misconception. I think somebody put it in a bunch of resume books and we all read it. And it's at the top of so many people's resumes, is this objective. And it's usually objective to find a job in a company that lets me, exercise my creativity and blah, 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 blah. And the objective is what you want out of your next job. Well, let me tell you something. As someone who reads resumes, I don't care what you want out of your next job. I want to know what I'm going to get out of you. So my first big resume tip is really, frankly, it goes back to that benefit to consumer. Get rid of that objective. What you want to do instead is do a quick little 2-3 sentence overview of what you bring to the table, what you bring to this position that nobody else does. That's actually something I talk a lot about with my students, is the concept of a USP, which stands for unique selling point or unique selling proposition. And it's not just for when you're trying to sell minivans or fruit snacks. The unique selling proposition is what sets your unique selling proposition is what sets you apart as a professional, as a candidate for a job, what you bring to the table that nobody else does, what you can offer, what your benefit to consumer is. And that consumer, of course, is the person who's reading that resume, the hiring manager. So first big tip, get rid of the objective. It's a waste of space on your resume. Instead, start out your resume with a couple of sentences just going over what you bring to the table and what makes you a great candidate and why they should hire you. Second point actually comes back to the kind of the nobody reads all the copy, or you want to make it easy for people to read. If you have so much experience that you have to take it down to 8-point type, or even really 11-point type in order to fit everything onto one page, go on to 2 pages. When you're just getting out of school and you don't have a ton of experience, then yes, you can probably fit everything onto one page. But I think that one page rule is definitely dying, if not dead. If you have so much fantastic experience that you can't fit it onto one page, it's kind of crazy to require you to stick it to one page. You can't imagine that a candidate for vice president of marketing would be able to keep their experience to just one page. So yeah, don't worry about the one page. That said, you want to practice all the other rules, and you want to keep it concise, and you want to keep it to the point, and you want to keep your copy effective. One of the rules for copywriting is that you have a purpose for every single word that you write. And that's really, it should be true for all kinds of writing. You don't just put words in there because you feel like you need to put words in there. You should be able to, when you're looking at your resume, you should be able to close your eyes, point at a word, and look at the word and explain why that word is in your resume. Every single word. And that is going to help you to make it concise, and also help you to make it more effective. If you have a lot of words in your resume that don't serve a purpose, getting rid of those is just going to help your excellent experience shine through. Those are my big ones.
Got a really good question from Christina that I think that you're going to have a really great answer for. Christina is considering a career change to becoming a professional copywriter. What would you suggest for her as a first step?
Okay, so Obviously, come over to my site. No, but in all seriousness, no. Check out our site, filthyrichwriter.com. It's and I should say, I know that sounds, the name of the website sounds very flip, but the whole concept is that you are filthy rich if you have a job you really like, and if you get paid well for doing it, and if you enjoy going into work. And that's what copywriting is for me, and that's what it is for a lot of copywriters. So that's where the concept of being a filthy rich writer comes from, which is not to say that you can't also make great money on it. But check out our website, because we have made it very, very actionable, and everything that we put up there is tips and tools and very useful stuff. We work very hard to do that. But beyond that, start looking critically at some of the stuff that you see around you. They see the emails that you see coming into your inbox, and the banner ads on websites that you normally kind of skip because you're not really all that interested in banner ads. The magazine ads that you normally flip past, and start reading them through. And really using those 3 points is a great place to start. Read them through and say, does this have a clear benefit to consumer? What is it? Is it clear who the target audience is, and does it seem like they're writing to that target audience? Do they have a clear call to action? That's a really great step to start, and start thinking really critically about the copy that's already around you. And I want to say too, you'll probably see a lot of stuff that doesn't measure up. There's a lot of really not great copy out there, which is great for our career growth. But that's going to help you to understand what does make great copy and what doesn't make great copy. And then beyond that, you'll want to do some learning. You need to learn. This is, we've kind of glazed over not glazed over, what's a better word? We've talked really high level about some of the basics of copywriting. But obviously there's a lot more than that, because it's a full career. So you're going to want to learn everything that you want to learn the fundamentals, and you need to learn the more advanced techniques and that kind of thing. And then along with that will come, getting your first clients. I usually recommend people start with small business clients, because you can help them the most and the fastest, and then building up your portfolio and all that kind of stuff. But which is a whole nother topic. And if you want more about that, yeah, definitely shoot me an email, and we can chat a little bit more.
Alia has a great question. If she gets a very long email with a lot of notes, and I have questions, is it appropriate for him to copy and paste certain parts of that original email into a response with the question? What's your advice for handling that?
Yeah, it's a great question, because you can fix your own communication, but you can't necessarily fix other people's communication. Yes, I will do that if it's a really long email and they have a ton of different questions, and I've seen other people do it, as long as it's done respectfully. I would recommend saying something like, hey, lots of great questions. I am copying and pasting some of your sections just so it's easy for you to refer to, and you'll see my notes in blue or something like that, or my responses in blue. That can be a really good way to keep things clear. And again, as long as you're respectful about it, not that you're going to say, wow, your email is really crazy. I couldn't possibly deal with it all at once, so I had to break it up. But just letting them know that you've included their sections and your responses in the email, and kind of broken it up just to make it easier for them, make it easier for everybody, really.
So our remaining questions are all of the sort of workplace psychology variety, and if you don't mind me asking those, Thomas got a good one. He's noticing that he feels like punctuation and grammar errors are really on the rise in a lot of writing. What's your take on raising these sort of errors, for lack of a better word, with perpetrators? When you've got somebody in the office who's really sort of violating a lot of these generally accepted principles for copywriting, how do you address that with somebody?
Well, I think that, what did they do in that TV show, The Office? Put your stapler in Jell-O. I think it depends on exactly who you're raising them to. If you're raising them to a colleague and you don't do it right, you can expect to come in and find your stapler in Jell-O, or your phone super glued to itself. Obviously, I'm kidding, but it's a tricky thing to do because it's a politeness issue, right? It's the same thing where if you notice that one of your colleagues was wearing, I don't know, inappropriately tight pants or something like that, how would you bring that up? It's that same kind of, people have that same kind of reaction because it's something very personal and something that they put out in the world. It's their writing and they put that out in the world, and it's their pants and they put that out in the world. So you have to be very careful about it. If it's someone who reports to you, then absolutely 110% bring it up to them, and again, if it's someone who reports to you, just let them know that as a career building and professional development, you want to work with them on grammar and punctuation, and just to make sure that they come across as professionally as possible. If it's a colleague, it's going to depend on your relationship with that colleague, frankly. If they're if you have a relatively good relationship and you don't think they'd mind if you said, hey, I know you don't mean to be doing this, but you every once in a while it looks like you put the it's in the apostrophe in the wrong place in it's, and I'm only bringing this up just because I know that I would want you to tell me the same thing, that kind of situation. But again, you're going to want to be really polite. And there are probably going to be plenty of colleagues where you don't have that kind of relationship and you don't want to bring that up. If you are concerned that they're sending those emails out to clients, for example, and it's making your company look bad, then that might be something where you go to HR and say, hey, I'm concerned about this. I've seen this a lot, and I'm sure myself I could improve as well. Could we bring someone in to do a grammar seminar or a punctuation seminar? Do a quick lunch and learn or something, and just make sure those people in your team, or have HR make sure people attend it. It's going to be hard for you to be the grammar police and still be as popular as you are now. And if it's your boss, then good luck. Then just look forward to the day when you're doing his or her job and you can have your emails look so much better.
As a representative of Boston University, I want to make sure that any views expressed about putting office supplies and staplers in Jell-O are expressly owned by the presenter and not by the university. We've got one last great question. Sarah, we'll end on this. Thank you for typing this one in. Nikki, what are your thoughts about smiley faces or other kinds of emojis in workplace emails?
Oh, that's a great question. Okay, so the bigger point, if there are two things it depends on. First of all, it depends on your workplace. And you are probably going to have to get a gauge for that. There are some companies that are they're a little bit more conservative, and they're a little bit more straightforward, and they're a little less jokey in their emails just in general. And they won't use smileys or anything like that. And they will rarely use exclamation points or anything along those lines. And in that case, then you want to avoid it. And that's really kind of when you get into a job, start looking at the emails you're getting. If nobody else is sending smiley faces, then it's probably not a great idea for you to include them. And then that kind of brings me to point number 2, is that it depends on your level, and it depends on how you want to be perceived. If you are relatively young and relatively new to the office, relatively new to workplaces, you already have a little bit of a struggle to be taken seriously. And unfortunately, probably unfairly, but if you are including smiley faces in your emails and you are younger or newer to the workplace, and that it's not going to, it may count against you, put it that way. And again, probably unfairly, but you already have a little bit of a struggle to be taken a little bit more seriously. So you don't want to set yourself up for any extra challenges. I mean, that said, if you're emailing a colleague who's a friend, then yes, of course, smiley faces, exclamation points, all that kind of stuff. But it also depends on your level in the organization. If, on the other hand, you are the vice president of sales and it's a friendly office and you're a friendly person, and you are emailing people who are your subordinates, then smiley faces are probably fine. Just use them carefully, I think is what my point is, and think about how you want to be perceived. They can come across as friendly, and they can come across as exuberant, and what's the word I'm looking for? Enthusiastic, but they can also come across as a little bit young and a little bit unserious. So if you're not sure, then don't include them.
Nikki, this was awesome. Obviously, we had a full 30 minutes of question and answers. We've got hundreds of thousands of alumni who are writing emails at work every day. So thank you again so much for offering this for the alumni community. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. This was so much fun.
I'm glad to hear that. And thank you all for participating today. We actually have 6 great career webinars coming up in March, which is part of our March Alumni Career Weeks series. The BU Alumni Association is dedicating the month of March to alumni careers with 30 days of networking events, webinars, panel discussions, and more. Whether you're a seasoned professional looking for a change, you're new to the job market, or you need advice to apply to your career, there's likely something for you. I invite everybody to check out the full schedule of events for March on our website at bu.edu/alumni. As always, if you or any BU alumni you know would be interested in presenting a professional development webinar or have a topic that you'd like to showcase for the BU Alumni Association, please feel free to contact me at the Alumni Relations Office or by email at jtmurphy@bu.edu. Thank you, everybody, for your time. Have a great day or a great evening, wherever you might be.